We all agree that breastfeeding is the optimum nutrition for young infants, not only for the physical, but also for the neurological and the development of the children. The WHO, the SPGAN, and all the international societies, they advocate exclusive breastfeeding for 4 to 6 months. And that's probably the best way to feed the infants. However, when the breast milk is not available or not sufficient, then infant formula is the only safe alternative to that. So, Professor Yannis, the floor is yours. We are looking forward to learn from your experience today.
Dear Miqdady, thank you very much for the kind introduction. I would also like to thank FrieslandCampina for inviting me to join this webinar. Today, my presentation will focus on two of the major solid components of milk, proteins and lipids, and how manufacturing procedures, type and quality of ingredients used could differently affect digestibility, bioavailability of nutrients, and potentially affecting growth and development of infants. Protein quality can be differently affected during infant formula production due to the processing and heating applied for the production of the formulas. When single manufacturing process is applied, when the milk is used as the starting ingredient in infant formula production, milk is going through minimal number of steps, including heat treatment, drying, packaging to deliver the final product. However, as most of the companies do not produce their own milk, protein quality might be affected due to the fact that formula and raw milk powder is sourced by those companies, and this formula is going through reconstitution, heated treatment, drying, and packaging once again to deliver the final product. Therefore, these additional steps during process and heating can affect protein quality via a non-enzymatic reaction called Maillard reaction. Specifically, lactose from the milk and proteins, again from the milk, predominantly lysine, which is a major amino acid in milk, they are reacting together under the high temperature to develop glycated proteins. This is called also as Amadori products. This is the Maillard reaction, and I need to indicate that the higher the heat treatment, the higher the glycation of the protein. The level of glycation can be assessed by block lysine. Block lysine indicates how much glycated is the protein, and the higher levels of block lysine indicate low bioavailability of amino acids in milk. Let me explain to you how this is happening. When no or low glycation is taking place, proteolytic enzyme targets specific cleavage sites on the proteins, hydrolyzing proteins to shorter peptides and free amino acids, which are easily further digested and absorbed by the infant to deliver all essential amino acids for the infant. However, when increased level of glycation is present, meaning high level of block lysine can inhibit the action of those proteolytic enzymes or those specific cleavage sites, delivering longer peptides which cannot be absorbed by the intestine and therefore reduce availability of essential amino acid for the infant. Furthermore, the long peptides pass to the large intestine and increasing colonic protein fermentation, which can induce potential microbiome changes and gas formation, and that will lead to potential digestive discomfort for the infant. Summarizing, the higher the glycation in the product, the lower the protein quality and digestibility, indicating a reduced availability of essential amino acids and therefore potentially affecting infant's growth and development and induced GI discomfort for the infant. Now let's look on some recent studies that provide additional evidence, supportive evidence to what I have already presented to you. Starting with an in vitro study. In this in vitro study by Zenker et al., the protein digestibility on different infant formulas with different levels of protein glycation was evaluated. As you can see in this slide here, infant formula was heated to deliver different level of glycation from 6.5% of block lysine to 44.5% of block lysine. Then this formula underwent an in vitro simulation of full-term infant digestion, consisting of 60 minutes of gastric phase and 60 minutes of intestinal phase, and at the end, the level of protein hydrolysis was assessed. The results of this study indicate that the average peptide length after digestion was significantly higher for the product with a higher glycation, with a higher levels of block glycine, indicating a poor digestibility of proteins for this formula compared to the other formula. When we're looking on this side of the slide on the percentages of peptides in the different size ranges, you can see that for the peptides with a longer length, with more than 15 amino acids, the survival of longer peptides was higher in the formulas with a higher protein glycation, indicating poor digestibility of protein and in this in vitro study. However, as this in vitro study cannot provide evidence regarding what actually happens in real life in humans. So the question is, high glycated levels of protein can indeed lead to lower levels of amino acids, circulating amino acids in the blood. So this actually was the research hypothesis of the next study I will present to you. In this study, postprandial plasma lysine responses were evaluated for subjects consuming milk powders with different levels of protein glycation. The milk formula used were a formula with low glycation, medium glycation, and high glycation, and you can see here the relevant percentages of block glycine, 3, 20, 15 respectively. The subject, 15 male subject, had to consume this milk powder after overnight fasting, and blood was taken from the subjects 11 times over the 6 hours to define lysine concentration in the plasma postprandially. The results of the study show that the milk powder with a lower glycation level had significantly higher levels of circulated plasma lysine at all time points after formula consumption. On this side of the slide, you can also see the incremental area under the curve, that again the same thing, the formula, the powder, the milk powder with a lower level of protein glycation had significantly higher plasma lysine concentration, delivered higher plasma lysine concentration after digestion, which was significantly higher compared to all other formula. Taken together, these results indicate that indeed, the lower the protein glycation in the milk powder, the higher the levels of blood lysine, indicating a higher bioavailability of amino acids. Now let's move to real life conditions and let's see this study on infants. The aim of this study, which was an unblinded cross-sectional observational study conducted in China, was to evaluate whether gut discomfort symptoms varied in infants consuming different levels consuming infant formulas with different level of protein glycation. To perform this study, 452 infants were recruited, already consuming one of those formulas available in the market. The levels of block glycine in these formulas were evaluated. As you can see here, the levels of block glycine vary from 9 to 20% in those formulas. Furthermore, during a period of 1 week, parents were asked to provide data via diaries and questionnaires on formula consumption, GI symptoms, stool characteristics, and crying effusions behavior of the infants. The results of the study showed that the infants consuming the formula with the lowest block glycine levels had significantly higher reported number of defecations with no hard stools. Also, for the same infants, the time of crying effusiveness, fuzziness at night was significantly lower compared to the infants consuming the other products. So these results suggest that the gut discomfort symptoms were lower for the infants consuming the formula with the lower levels of protein glycation. Overall, to conclude on the protein quality, double manufacturing process as excessive heat treatment during infant formula production leads to protein glycation and therefore to lower protein quality and digestibility. Ensuring low levels of protein glycation in infant formula can preserve amino acid bioavailability and support optimal growth and development, as well lower GI discomfort for the infant. In line with this conclusion, especially regarding the low levels of protein glycation for infant formula, is this EFSA recommendation, which clearly indicates in this report that Maillard reaction products should be kept as low as technologically possible in the formula due to the adverse effect on the nutritional value of protein. Moving back to my second part of my presentation, I will now present to you, I will focus on lipids, which is the second most abundant solid component of milk. The majority of fat in milk comes in the form of triglycerides. The position of fatty acids in the backbone of triglycerides is very important, as depending on their position, it will determine whether they will be released as single fatty acids, free fatty acids, or monoglycerides. Specifically, lipases cleave selectively at SN1 position and SN3 position to deliver free fatty acid, 2 free fatty acids, and 1 monoglyceride. Unsaturated fatty acids and short-chain saturated fatty acids are efficiently absorbed in these positions as free fatty acids, while long-chain saturated fatty acids are optimally absorbed only as monoglycerides. Considering that a large part of the fatty acids in milk come as long-chain saturated fatty acid, and especially palmitic acid, which is more than 25% of fatty acids in milk, that indicate that the appropriate position for this fatty acid should be in the SN2 position. If this fatty acid is placed at SN1 or SN3 position, it will be poorly absorbed, as it will release as free fatty acid and will create insoluble fatty acid soaps complexes with calcium and magnesium, and will be excreted in feces. That will lead not only to a loss in the feces of nutrients such as fatty acids, calcium, and magnesium, but also that will cause hard stools, constipation, and gut discomfort for the infant. On the opposite, having palmitic acid at SN2 position is the appropriate position to have, as several studies have shown that will improve fatty acid and calcium absorption and bone development of infants, will lower soap formation and calcium excretion, and will improve stool consistency and low GI discomfort for the infants. This is not only supported by the available literature, this is also supported by nature, I would say. If we look at the breast milk fat at the SN2 position, more than about 70% of the fatty acid placed at SN2 position are palmitic acid. When we look on the bovine milk, more than 40% of palmitic acid of fatty acid at the SN2 position are palmitic acid, and when it comes to vegetable fat blends, less than 30% of the fatty acids in this position are palmitic acid, while the majority of fatty acids palmitic acid are placed at the SN1 and SN3 position. Interesting to notice that these vegetable fat blends are commonly used in the infant formula production, and thus indicate that these fatty acids are not optimally absorbed. So the question now is, what about replacing part of those vegetable fatty blends from infant formula and substitute them with bovine milk fat to improve palmitic acid absorption, calcium absorption, and improve stool consistency for the infants? That was exactly the hypothesis tested in this study. This study is consisted by 2 double-blind randomized control crossover studies, where 17 and 18 infants were recruited respectively for the needs of the study 1 and study 2. The formulas tested in this study was a 50% milk fat formula, a 20% milk fat formula, and a vegetable fat blend formula without any milk fat. And as you can see here, the palmitic acid at SN2 position delivered in each formula. In this one was about 40%, and this one was about 20%, and this formula was about 10%. In crossover study 1, a formula with 50% milk fat was compared with the vegetable fat formula, and the infants were either allocated to start with this formula or this formula for 2 weeks, and after consumption of 2 weeks, they swap to the other formula respectively. At the end of the 2 weeks period, stool samples were collected and stool consistency was evaluated based on parental reports, and the same was repeated at the end of the 2 weeks period here. Similarly, the same procedure were applied for the crossover study 2. Let's see the results now of the study. In this side of the slide, in these two sets of figures, we can see palmitic acid soaps in stool samples, and on this side of the slide, we can see total fatty acid soaps in the stools. As you can see here, both 50% milk formula and 20% milk formula had significantly lower palmitic acid soaps in the stools compared to the vegetable fat formula, and similarly for the total fatty acid soaps. So these results suggest that both the 50 and the 20% milk formula had a better absorption of both palmitic acid and total fatty acid in infants' intestine, as suggested by these results. Still, a more favorable outcome was observed for the 50% milk formula compared to the 20% milk formula. Regarding calcium excretion in stool samples, we can see again that both the 50 and the 20% milk formula had a lower and therefore better lower calcium excretion in the stool samples compared to the vegetable fat formula, again suggested a better absorption of calcium in the infant's intestine. Regarding stool consistency, only for the 50% milk fat formula, we observe a significantly lower, but this is favorable, outcome compared to the vegetable fat formula, as this is indicate that the soft and watery stools observed on those infants are closer to the stool consistency results we get from breastfed infants. To summarize on the role of milk fat, using bovine milk fat in infant formula increases SN2 palmitic acid content and leads to reduced excretion of fatty acid soaps and calcium in stools, suggesting a better absorption of fatty acid and calcium in infants' intestine. Also improves stool consistency. And closing, I would like to share with you this take-home message. Using high-quality milk in infant formula production, apply minimal processing to keep protein glycation low, using milk fat to increase SN2 palmitate, can lead to high availability of amino acid, fat, and calcium, and support infant growth and low GI discomfort in infants. Thank you for your attention.
This is a question from Dr. Maria Tricata. I'm not sure where she's from, as we have around 400 people participating in tonight's activity. Her question is it mandatory for the baby food industry to mention the percentage of the glycation so we would be able to select among different products? Is it a regulatory point?
Yeah, well, I don't think it is compulsory, to be honest. I'm not very sure on that. But what I would like to stress the attention of our audience is that infant formula are highly regulated by European Food Safety Authority and Codex. So all infant formula comply with the regulations. Still, as more evidence come now and published in the literature, I would suggest, or maybe I would think, that in the future there might be also some indications regarding the levels of protein glycation on the products. But I don't think currently they're obliged to do so. But I'm not sure on that.